Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome to my latest Legends of Runeterra patch notes review. Patch notes for patch 1.4 are finally officially out, so it's time for another review. The notes got leaked yesterday already, earlier, but I kinda wanted to wait for the full official patch notes to be out until doing this video, both to use the patch notes in the video as well as providing you with the 100% final version, because sometimes if stuff gets leaked, it's not final and they change something and stuff like that. So before we dive right in, you know the drill. Hit the subscribe button down below to not miss out on future content. And now let me briefly introduce you to today's sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by NordVPN, one of the leading virtual private network providers out there. A virtual private network keeps your data secure and yourself anonymous while using the internet. NordVPN comes with super fast servers, allows you to unlock your favorite entertainment websites like Netflix. They provide a 30-day money-back guarantee. They also have an included cybersecurity suite, which acts as an ad blocker to boot. They don't lock any of your data, provide a 24/7 customer support, and you can use it on up to 6 simultaneous connections, so one account covers most or all of your electronic devices. And most importantly, they don't have any bandwidth limit, so you can use it non-stop without it getting throttled, which is particularly important for heavy users like us. It also won multiple awards and comes highly recommended by top technology experts. So if you're still surfing online without a VPN, now is the time to change that. Get NordVPN now, 70% off for a 3-year plan, including 1 month extra for free using the code ManuS or the personalized link in the description down below. And now on to today's content. Alright, it's time to dive into the patch notes. So first off, they talk a bit about their card adjustments philosophy here. So they basically want to change a bunch of epics to make them more compelling and playable, because they're supposed to be these kind of cool, flashy cards that create cool gameplay, and there are a bunch that hardly see any play, and they wanted to fix that. We'll measure how well they did that when we talk about individual cards. Then Freljord as a region has had a comparably pretty low play rate to other regions, and when it sees play, it's mostly splashing for a few very specific powerful cards, mostly Omen Hawk, Fury, Elixir, and like Sejuani. Not a whole lot of like heavy Freljord stuff or Freljord synergy based, other than like I guess the Ash Sejuani deck, which isn't a great deck to begin with. So they wanted to improve that, and a big problem in particular have been that Freljord champions have been in kind of a rough spot, so there isn't really a whole lot of point of building your deck around Freljord and Freljord champions. We have like the only really like build around Freljord champion that we have is Ash, and I guess Sejuani, but that's less of a build around and more of a like kind of good card that is one of the individual powerful cards that sees splash play in decks like almost mono Bilgewater and stuff like that. So yeah, and lastly they adjusted the steal from the deck mechanic. So those are their goals. Then we get the new game mode Gauntlet, which is kind of like a sort of competitive tournament run type thing. People coming from MTG Arena, there are similar like sort of events where you just play until you win or lose a certain amount and get rewards for it. So that's nice. I would assume they might cost shards, but since they don't mention it here, it might just not cost anything. We'll see how they are exactly implemented. Then we get the new ranked season. One thing that I'm not super happy about is the fact that there's this 1 day in between seasons. Like, I don't get why it isn't like in other games where you just have a seamless transition. There's like midnight of every time zone or whatever, that everything resets, and after that you can keep going. This way this creates this weird off day where, like right now, we don't have the new patch. We can't play ranked anymore, so it's utterly pointless to play the game right now. And by the time we get the patch this evening, it's semi-pointless to play the and then like by the time we get the patch tonight, there's a point in playing. So basically from like yesterday, I think around 7 p.m. Central European time to like 6 or 7 p.m. European time today, playing Runeterra is basically pointless and almost non-existent, which is kind of random, and I don't get why it has to be that way. I wonder what their background reasoning for it is, because in other games it doesn't exist and it doesn't need to exist. So yeah, that's a bit frustrating, especially for streamers, which is why I suspended my stream today. There's just no point in streaming Runeterra today. It's just pointless. So yeah, and those are the season medals. Ironically, I like the more simple, lower level medals better than the kind of overbearing, colorful, higher ranked ones, but we can't choose, so whatever. And yeah, here's like how many LP each division drops, so there's you get set back less the lower you are, so that's kind of forgiving. And then we have the Masters LP update. So now, instead of people being ranked by their MMR in Masters, they will be ranked by LP, and every win will give you 15 to 25 LP, and every loss will lose you 15 to 25. So it's balanced around 20, and the higher the discrepancy, the closer you get to 25, and the higher the discrepancy in the other direction, the closer you get to 15. Like if the opponent is much weaker than you get closer to 15 LP, and if they are stronger, like higher ranked than you get closer to 25 LP. All that is a good change. The one thing that I really don't like is that we get, instead of a rank now, we get LP displayed, which is really frustrating because I don't want to have to be looking up my rank all the time to know what my rank is, and I care much more about what my rank is, so that I better can assess how I'm positioned relative to other players, than having this arbitrary LP amount that is basically pointless information without putting it in context with other LP numbers and looking at what other people's LP are. While your rank is like doesn't need additional context. It's context in itself. If you rank 10, you know you are the 10th best person, or like 10th highest ranked person of everyone on the server, while having LP amount X tells me nothing. So I really don't like that. I like that change in the background, but I really hope they revert this and display rank instead of LP. They can display LP somewhere else for people that want to check how their LP changes and stuff, but I think displaying LP is really bad. It also feels a lot worse to gain an arbitrary amount of points after a win, rather than get the feeling of I climbed this many places, basically. And also the outside ladders will probably not update in real time, so you will be lagging behind and stuff like that. It's really, really frustrating. I really hate this system, and I hope they reconsider this. I don't get why they would take away one of the biggest motivators for a lot of players, in my opinion, is to see your rank increase from climbing in real time, rather than have this arbitrary point amount. And you don't even know, like, sure, you might get 25 LP for a win, but you don't even know how many people that makes you pass, because maybe people are ordered in a way that barely makes you move. So it's just this pointless information that needs so much context to mean anything, that it's just frustrating to me, and I really, really dislike this change. And I can only like appeal and maybe tweet at them and let them know that we want to see our rank in game. So if you feel like me, just add them, tweet at them on Twitter, let them know how you feel about it, because I think the change in the background is good, making ranked more consistent, less swingy, and a more steady move upward or downward depending on your win rate is a good thing. But yeah, not having the rank displayed at the end of each game and in the client is just a horrible decision, and I don't get why they would do this. I know they do this in some of the other games, but even there I think it's a bad system, and I think there's a good reason why almost no other game does it, and almost every other game shows you a rank because that's what people want to see. Like, be it Hearthstone, be it Eternal, be it Magic, everywhere you see your rank. Because that's what people care about, your rank, not your like arbitrary points. Anyway, on to the card updates. So first off, we got a bit of a surprise buff to Darius. Didn't see that one coming. I thought Darius was fine. I've never felt quite like that Darius was the problem. The problem was more enough types of decks that want Darius. But now Darius is even greater. He has 6 health in level up, so he gets +4/+1 instead of +4/0, which is nice. And yeah, they want to encourage a bit more like unit-based sort of Noxus beatdown stuff that is less low to the ground plus burn, since that's all we have right now. The unfortunate issue here is that the nerf to rearguard is a major pain to these decks and makes it really hard for them to be a thing, because rearguard was the kind of foundation of this unit-based beatdown type strategy. And as a 3/1 in a world with like Hapless Aristocrats, Valfeasts, Make It Rains, Omen Hawks, and all that punishing stuff, this is just gonna be hard to make it happen. So yeah, I really didn't like the rearguard change for that reason, and it causes a lot of like incidental problems with decks like this. Alright, on to the next card. Genevieve, just straight up cost reduction from 7 to 6. I think that's pretty reasonable. Like, there was a time where she kind of could keep up and people messed around with her, but I think as the set grows and the power level grows and the more cards you have, the harder it will be for cards to be in the top X% of cards to make it, and that kind of put Genevieve further out on the fringes than she already was, to a point where she basically wasn't really a consideration anymore. And putting her to 6 is pretty nice. It's still, the level up condition is still the same, so there's even a turn more technically for the opponent to be able to deal with her, but also a turn more to benefit from her impact. And obviously, given that she deals 1 to everything, the earlier she comes down, the more impact she can have. So I like that change. Not sure how much of an impact it will have large scale, like if there will suddenly be an Genevieve deck or not. I'm thinking about it. I'm not so sure, but now it at least kind of curves better with Rekindler for like Genevieve recursion zombie Genevieve stuff. And Mistcall, so that's nice. We'll see if there will be an uptick in Genevieve and if there is maybe like some potential Genevieve deck. Next we have the biggest offender of underpowered champion in the game. Braum was in such a bad spot that he wasn't even really considered for experimental stuff and like kind of cool decks like Genevieve was for like Genevieve Karma or zombie Genevieve type stuff, while Braum was just basically irrelevant. He was basically non-existent. So they changed him. Now he costs 4 and is a 1/5, so he got +1 attack and +1 in cost. But the first time he survives damage on his front side, you summon a Mighty Poro. So that's pretty huge, actually. Like, if you play this on turn 4 with a tech token, you immediately potentially can kill something small and make a 3/3 Poro. So you basically get a 1/5 regeneration that can level up and a 3/3 Overwhelm, which is pretty huge. Plus, they also buffed his level up. Instead of turning into an 07, he now turns into a 2/6. So before, even with the +1 attack buff, he would have been a 1/7, but they decided a 2/6 is a better choice. Which I agree, like that gives him a lot more impact, makes him a lot more annoying. I think Braum is actually pretty appealing and quite good right now, so I would expect there to be at least one deck with 3 Braum in it that will be like at least tier 2. Maybe there's even potential for a tier 1 Braum deck. Especially because there are some further things that help Freljord be in a bit of a better spot that we will see down the patch notes. Then we have Super Mega Death Rocket, now went from 2 to 1. That is a super weird and arbitrary change. That doesn't change the quality of Jinx at all. If you had Jinx and got Jinx to level, she was super good and you were just crushing. Rocket costing 1 or 2, super trivial. Rarely ever a problem that Rocket costs 2, and yeah, once you get to Rocket, you are just in tip-top shape. So this is a really weird change, and I don't see what the purpose of this is. It's just, yeah, the most random change ever, basically. Next we have Genevieve Elmhart. The card was actually quite solid already. We've played it in our Scout Bilgewater Demacia deck early on that my friend and I came up with on the first day the set released, and we're quite happy with her. But yeah, I guess they are of the opinion that there are too many good 6-drops, so they wanted to make her better to better compete with the other 6-drops, which is reasonable, but she's also really powerful. Like Scout Challenger is really, really good, and now she's even better. I think she's now like a very legit competition for Citria, especially once you care about Scout stuff. So in a Quinn Misfortune deck, this is the real deal, and together with some of the prior changes, maybe there is more potential for like a Scout-centric deck to shine again. Next, Unyielding Spirit finally became fast. I've been saying that for like 1 or 2 patch notes now, and I think that's the right way to balance the card. The effect was not necessarily the problem. The problem was that it was just super free, and there was barely any counterplay in most regions where you could just for free slap it on something. And if your region combination doesn't have a way to deal with, say, an Unyielding Spirit champion, you're just in real trouble and often just lose to it. So now a lot more regions can actually stop Unyielding Spirit from happening that don't have a way to remove it once it's resolved, but they can make sure that it doesn't resolve in the first place, which is fine. Like, it's fine that there are different levels of vulnerability to something, but having like straight up no counterplay and just getting owned for free by these cards, by a card like this, is just very toxic. And I'm glad they came around. They've been holding off on this last patch, and now they went through with it. And I think this will make the card a fringe, like sort of one-off high risk, high reward type thing, similar to Judgment, but I think that's honestly what it should be. Like, it shouldn't be a widely played, like, standard thing to do that just completely pushes out a lot of like strategies and region combinations in worst case. Next we have Basilisk Rider, another neat buff to like Noxus unit-based stuff, from 5/2 to 5/3, which means he turns into a 6/4 if you hit the Allegiance. 4 health is kind of the sweet spot for 4-drops where they start mattering, because then they don't trade down into like 2 and 3-drops anymore that easily, so that's pretty nice. Ironically though, what they are saying here is similarly, many aggressive Noxus decks are ignoring more expensive Noxus units in favor of burn or utility cards from other regions, and we want to provide more tools for traditional Trifarian-based aggressive decks. That is nice, but like I said, without Rearguard, I think that's going to be a tall order if possible at all. So if Rearguard was still what it was, I would be pretty excited about these changes. With Rearguard in the place that it is now, I have a hard time seeing this going anywhere. I'll be taking a look anyway and experimenting a bit, but I doubt it's gonna go very far. And Captain Ferran got a pretty sweet buff. Instead of basically transforming your entire hand in decimates, now you just draw 3 decimates, which is, or like create 3 decimates in your hand, which is a lot better. So you basically get like 12 damage for free while keeping your hand, and he's an 8/8 overwhelm that ideally can smack right away. So the card's pretty cool. The problem is the types of decks that would want these often are the types of decks that have Swain and Leviathan, if you have Swain in your deck, is much better than Ferran. So that's going to be a bit of a rough sell, but Ferran is kind of like the faster, harder finisher, and if you're in like a non-Swain, like big mid-range beatdown type deck, he could be interesting as like a 1 or 2 of, sort of in a similar way as, I don't know, Rex in Bilgewater mid-range decks, although it serves a different purpose of like ending the game rather than sort of controlling the board. So it's less flexible, but it's also like harder hitting, and the stats are pretty beastly. So definitely an interesting card to mess around with, just not sure how much of a place for it there is right now, but power level wise, great change. Next we have Aurora Borealis. They feel like it had too steep of a cost for no immediate impact, so they're moving it down one to make Poros a bit more appealing. And as we all know, everyone is gonna be trying Poros on the first day, and who can blame them? And we will too. So as you saw yesterday on stream, potentially, I already brewed up like a very first sort of sketch of Poros that I'm going to try on my stream tomorrow with the new patch and the new season. So we'll do some low-level climbing with Poros probably. Another Poro change, Poro Rudder. Accompanying our changes to Braum, we are adjusting Poro Rudder to provide Poro decks a more appealing on-curve option, since now Braum and Poro Rudder are boss falls, so that makes it a bit more awkward. And the change is pretty big. Now it's a 2-cost 2/3 instead of a 4-cost 3/4, so we lose half the cost, but only 1/3 of, like barely 1/3 of the stats. And yeah, he also only draws 1 Poro, not 2, so he's less sort of high power. He's more of a like average 2-drop, like 2-cost 2/3 is like a very robust, solid 2-drop option, and then generates some nice conditional value if you have like your turn 1 Poro. So it's basically one of the better 2-cost 2/3s in the game, where it has the condition of like drawing an additional card, which is nice, but it's less good at fueling your whole Poro engine. But Braum now gives you a Poro right away. So in a Poro deck with Braum and Poro Rudder, you kind of still have the same access to like additional Poros to fuel your Poro army. So we'll see how that's gonna play. That's a pretty nice change though. Next we have She Who Wanders, one of the OG bombs in LOR deck during back during beta. Has seen better days, so they want to make her a bit better and revert her to her to some of her old state, in that they gave back her regeneration, making her more of an impactful like epic finisher after she obliterated smaller things. So that makes her a bit more appealing as a finisher, rather than just sort of a sweeper with a decent big body that then gets kind of like worn down because you can't really wear down. Either you really answer it, or it's just gonna like keep smacking you over the head and blocking your best attacker every turn. We'll see if this brings She Who Wanders back into the conversation. It might, honestly. It's certainly not an irrelevant change, but it's a minor one, and I'm not sure if there is enough room for this type of deck right now, but it's something worth exploring to look into like more rampy stuff. Then They Who Endure, much maligned, got a change, went from 6 to 7 cost. That certainly matters, but it doesn't matter that much. Like, it often isn't even that great of a play on 6 in a lot of cases. So it still kind of has the same issue of like mid to late game just slamming a really big one-shot They Who Endure. So I'm not sure if that solves the problem enough. We'll see how it plays out. These kind of changes always can have more impact than they seem at first glance, so it's a bit hard to judge in a vacuum. But I would have probably preferred They Who Endure to lose Overwhelm. I discussed this with a friend of mine. And yeah, we like the idea of They Who Endure losing Overwhelm, making it less of a just, okay, here's my 15/15 They Who Endure. Do you have one of the few hard removals in the game? No, okay, then I attack you and you die. So yeah, we'll see how that's gonna play out. Next epic change. Rancheroplate basically got deleted and replaced with new Rancheroplate. That's what it really is. Like, the only thing that remains is the name. The card has nothing in common with the old card. So now Ren is a 4-cost 3/3 quick attack, and when he strikes, he creates a Shadow Fiend in hand. So he kind of keeps creating these Shadow Fiends that you can then throw at the opponent, making this kind of an interesting sort of aggressive-ish 4-drop that fuels something like Shark Chariot pretty well. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting card in a way. So I'm curious to see how the card is gonna pan out, gonna play. It's not obviously a slam dunk, I think, but it's a card that also doesn't seem bad. It's a card that I could see having a home and being kind of good and interesting. But yeah, once again, hard to say without trying it out. If I had to guess, the chance is probably bigger that it's like not gonna be quite that great and be like a major archetype than really taking off, but it's a card worth exploring for sure. Next we have J Medada. Massive change here. It's now a 6-cost 4/4 instead of a 8-cost 6/6 elusive. So losing the elusive here is kind of a big deal, and the fact that I'm least happy about, because I actually kind of liked old J and he saw some play in the right decks. Now I think he will probably see no play. I think the card is kind of useless now. The fact that it had elusive was part of what made the opponent, like force the opponent to target it in the first place, which before the elusive kind of forced them to do so, and now without elusive you just have this 4/4 that the opponent can ignore. Like the stats aren't even like threatening, like you easily create a board where J can't even attack. So he just kind of sits around and you hope he gets targeted by your stuff. So I think they made him way worse, and I hope he gets another change, because I think, yeah, this is pretty bad. They clarified that when he's targeted and survives, you draw a card, which was actually the case before for all I know, because if you willed him or killed him with vengeance, there was no card draw. Not sure if will now with this wording means it draws a card, because it technically survives, it just goes back to your hand. I'm not sure, but yeah, all in all, I really hate this change. They killed a kind of cool fringe top end card for PNZ decks that were needing this kind of 8-drop. I think it was really great in that role. It was just not that common of a way for PNZ to play out, but there were decks like the Allegiance PNZ deck that Josh Layton built in the beta, or the Draven Jinx deck, the Draven Vi deck that Patrick Dickman and I built a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, rip J Medada. Rest in peace, Indiana Jones. Next we have Escaped Abomination. Yeah, Cursed Keeper, Blighted Caretaker was a bit too heavy, and I agree that was a bit too swingy, so now they turned Abomination into a 4/3 instead of a 4/4, so it's much easier to trade into it with like your 3/2 drop and your 3 drops, for example. So yeah, I like that change. That's good. Given that a lot of 4 drops were even like not 4 health, having a 2 drop that makes a 4 health, 4/4 threat was kind of insane. So one stat point having to go here makes a lot of sense. And then we have Herring. Card has been kind of off the radar for quite some time, partially because it got changed to allies only, and because of changes in the metagame, and they want to see it as more of an option, so they reduced the cost from 10 to 9 to make it more appealing, which is kind of nice. Not sure how much it does, because I can see a lot of situations where you can play it for 9. It doesn't do that much yet, because not enough stuff died, especially now that it's allies only. But I mean, it's an improvement. We'll see how relevant it is. Next, they reduced Drag Dredgers from 2/1 to a 1/1. Overall, they've been pretty happy with Deep, but they felt like the early board presence was a bit better than they would liked. I guess that's fair. Like, the card does a lot of utility for also being a 2/1. So yeah, this certainly hampers the early game a bit more and focuses a bit more on the utility of Dredgers, and doesn't sort of give you like the baseline 2/1 1-drop with the free utility attached. Next we have Mindmeld. Yeah, was too costly for the effect, went from 8 to 7. Still not sure what I would want to do with it. I think part of the problem is that having room for only 6 units makes these kind of go wide type cards a lot worse. In other games, you would just create a bunch of like small 1/1s, like sort of 3 units, multi-unit things, token stuff, and then Mindmeld them to get a payoff. But in a game with only 6 board spots, that's a pretty limited payoff, especially if some of those units are already like real units that don't benefit as much from it. So I think the card sort of has a bit of a problem with the way the game is structured and the limitations of the game. But I don't know, maybe someday. And last but not least, we have Petty Officer. The card was actually already pretty good, so pretty surprised by this buff, but I'll take it. Now it went from a solid to good card to a pretty much great card. This card is an amazing 3-drop now, and probably kind of a must play in most Bilgewater decks, because yeah, getting a 3-cost 3/2 that also gets you a random 1-drop is amazing, and also has the option to amplify your next damage-based spell if you needed to do so. So much flexibility and so much like value and power in one card is amazing. This card is incredible now. It was already quite good before. Then they changed the steel from deck cards. Yeah, they mention here that it has been a contentious mechanic, and they're making changes to address some of the frustration players have experienced. So first of all, they keyworded it to nab. I think that's one of the things that changed, because the leaked patch notes, I think, from what I read, said Snatch, and now it's nab and not Snatch. Maybe there was a translation error, I'm not sure. Because I think the patch notes were only leaked in Thai, so it might have been a translation thing. Anyway, now the card is drawing from the bottom of the enemy deck rather than the top, so it doesn't get the enemy closer to their champions, but it also doesn't let you steal buffed cards, or like the Yeti from Trapper, the Tails Yeti and stuff like that, or like Yeti yelling. Basically, the drawing from top was particularly hostile to Freljord, because it had a lot of cards that had effects that affected the top of your deck, or put cards at the top of your deck. And yeah, having like one region, one mechanic be so overly punishing and destructive to one of the inherent sort of themes and mechanics of an entire region, and the region also being the weakest region in the game, is not exactly ideal. So I really like that change. Otherwise, it doesn't change that much. You still get cards from the enemy deck. Black Market Merchant now is a 2/1 instead of a 2/2. Honestly, I think they should have just removed the cost reduction. I think the cost reduction is a real issue, and in a lot of cases, sure, you can technically kill the merchant easier now with Valfies and all that stuff, and make it rain and so on. But in a lot of cases that won't matter, because you can play your merchant, play your pilfered goods, and then the opponent kills the merchant, and you don't care because you already got your cost reduction. I don't get why this guy gets to be sort of a much, much better Avaros and Sentry, that even now as a 2/1 is so much better than Sentry, because of the cost reduction and the potential of cost reduction on your other nap cards. So I think that's, in my opinion, actually the largest problem. They should have just kept them as a 2/2 and removed the cost reduction, and then I would have been happy. Yeah, Pilfered Goods didn't change, Yordle Grifter didn't change, they just keyworded it. But yeah, as they said here, making it easier for opponents to remove and harder to players to protect and build up multiple copies in the backline. But yeah, I think that is like the smaller issue. It's already really bad if you get to draw one card with cost reduction. That's already amazing, because then this is effectively like a 1-cost 2/1 that draws your card with a condition. And a lot of the time you can play Pilfered Goods the same turn, and then if they kill it after, who cares? That's like the average scenario. The rest is just high roll stuff that's less likely. Like, okay, whatever. Then they clear up a lot of card text consistency that we will see in game. And then we have some neat new personalization. Lee Sin's Iron Will board, that's actually the coolest champion board yet, because it doesn't have this kind of ugly, colored, overbearing image of the champion on the board. Instead, it has this really cool like kind of stone wall that has an ornament, like a chiseled out image of the champion, which is so much more subtle and so much more fitting for a board and looks great. This is awesome design, really good job, Riot. This board is amazing, and that's what a champion board should look like. I really don't like the benches and boards of the other champion boards. I like the frame of the other ones, but I really hate the board, which is why I would never get them. This one, really cool. Would love to see more boards in this direction for other champions. Then we get a new Guardian, Von Yip. It's a bit confusing. I thought Von Yip was Professor Von Yip. Not sure. Didn't know that Von Yip was also a cat, but I'm not that familiar with the lore. It's kind of a cool Guardian, a pretty cute one, so I think a lot of people will love it. I like it better than some of the recent Guardians that we got that I felt were quite random. All this one's pretty cool. And we get some nice card backs, especially the Scene one is really cool. The fifth one is alright. The Misfortune one looks really, really great. Just my personal opinion. And then we get 3 new emotes that I really don't care for and don't like very much. Not a big fan of these emotes, but there'll be probably some people that like them. And then there's like kind of a cool bundle of Lee Sin card back, Lee Sin board, and a unique icon that you only get from this bundle. So that's kind of neat. I still feel like the cosmetics are too expensive. Like this bundle is a pretty reasonable deal, but the individual cosmetics are way too expensive. I think they could easily like cost half and still would make a lot of money, and a lot more people would actually like spend money on cosmetics. Like one of the main reasons why I don't get cosmetics in Riot games is while their free-to-play model is very fair and very good, their sort of monetization model is just very stingy. Stuff is very overpriced and has pricing as if it was like real life physical objects, like works of art that were crafted or whatever. Like I just don't get why a board, for example, should cost like 10 euros. That's just insane. Like they could easily just cost like 5-6 euros, and that would still be a lot of money for like digital stuff like that. I just feel like they are unnecessarily pricey and makes it like pretty inaccessible for a wide audience. Like I'm sure there are plenty of like kind of people that really enjoy cosmetics and would even like want multiple cosmetics, but can't afford to like throw 10 euros at every board, 6 euro at every Guardian, and like I don't know, 5 euros at every emote. Especially the emojis are so expensive, given that you technically need a lot of them to fill out your emoji board in a way that you want it to. That I hope they at some point maybe reconsider this a bit and lower their prices a bit, because I feel they're just unnecessarily high and kind of arbitrarily high. Then a bunch of changes to Expedition archetypes. I'm not going to go over all of these. Just check them out if you play a lot of Expedition. I haven't played Expedition in quite some time. And they kept the vault at 25 capsules to avoid bodding and farming, and also banned bodding accounts, which makes sense. Got to keep your economy intact. Counteract this sort of stuff. Some polish stuff, level up of Teemo, polish and so on, and a bunch of bug fixes. So that's the patch notes, patch 1.4. Lots of interesting changes. Overall, pretty happy with the balance part of the patch. For the most part, there are a couple of gripes and a couple of confusing or randomly seeming things that I mentioned, but all in all, once again, a very solid patch, I would say. And we're gonna be starting to explore it on tomorrow's stream. So I hope I see you guys all tomorrow morning, fresh and bright, to explore the new season and the new patch. As usual, let me know in the comments how you feel about the patch and about my review and my assessment of things, and where and why you disagree. Let's have a conversation. And until then, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notification icon for more content in the future. And yeah, share it with your friends, turn off your ad block for YouTube to help support your favorite content creators for free, and show the sponsors in the description down below some love. That's it again for this time. I'm your host ManuS, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.